Good afternoon, Para-Wesley Bible Studiers, and welcome to our study on Zechariah. We are continuing with Zechariah chapter 5. We're just going to do the first 4 verses. That is the 6th vision of Zechariah. I thought we would just stay with 4 verses today, allow us to go a little bit deeper, and I don't want to rush into the next vision, which is the vision of the woman in the basket. So we spend some time with the first 4 verses, which is the vision of the flying scroll. The first few visions were complicated enough, but we could see a reference back to the context where Zechariah was speaking. We could see that it related to the temple. We could see it related to Zerubbabel and to Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, those that were involved in building the temple. This vision seems to become more remote and more difficult to connect back, and perhaps more complicated in its imagery. But it is interesting to be able to dig back and to see how it relates to other things in the Bible. And so we're going to look at 2 principal things, and that's the image of the scroll and the idea of the curse. But we'll just go through verse by verse just to pick up any key points there as well. So reading from verse 1, I looked again, and there before me was a flying scroll. He asked me, that's the angel that's helping him along, as we know, "What do you see?" I answered, "I see a flying scroll, 20 cubits long and 10 cubits wide." Well, I always visualized this as a little scroll with wings flapping its way through the sky. But apparently the flying scroll simply means that the scroll was open. It wasn't rolled up. It was open and probably flapping in the breeze like a banner. So you have this picture of this great big scroll. Some of the Bibles will have the measurements in meters or things that we understand. 20 cubits by 10 cubits is 9 meters by 4.5 meters. So it is an enormous scroll. And the fact that it's open and enormous means that it's easy for people to see. There's no secret about it. The scroll is open. The scroll is big. It's out there in the wide open. This is no secret. This is nothing hidden away. This is something that everybody needs to know about. It's very important. And the scrolls are mentioned a number of times in the Bible, but a couple of times that seem to relate more than others. The one that comes first to mind for me is the scroll in Revelation chapter 5, verse 1, which is the scroll with the 7 seals, where the prophet John is devastated because nobody is considered good enough to open the seals on the scroll. Now that scroll is very different because that scroll is sealed shut. That at the start of the vision is a secret, and the point of that vision is the opening of the scroll. Here in Zechariah's vision, the scroll is open and able for anybody to see. Then there are a couple of strange references to prophets with scrolls where they have to eat the scroll. The one is Ezekiel chapter 2 verse 9, and the other also in Revelation chapter 10 verse 8. And here the prophets are told that they must eat the scrolls and that they're going to be sweet in their mouths, but for the one in Revelation that it would be sour in their stomachs. Ezekiel's scroll is a scroll of lament, a scroll of woe. The scroll in Revelation, we don't know what the contents are, and it's a very small scroll. And we get the feeling that this is different to Zechariah's scroll of openness. This is a scroll that's going to be sour in the prophet's stomach. It's going to be something difficult to prophesy, but it's small and it's hidden away, which strikes me as just like the prophecies in the rest of Revelation. Very difficult to understand, very difficult to see. But apparently, this one in Zechariah is a big, wide open scroll that we can all understand. That being so, it is still a little tricky to figure out where Zechariah is going and what he wants us to know. The size of the scroll, as I said, is big, so that we can all see. Some scholar has actually picked up the fact that this scroll, being 10 cubits by 20 cubits, is also the exact size of the portico of Solomon's temple. So that may be a coincidence, or it may be significant that this scroll is particularly the size is told to Zechariah. And the portico was apparently used for the place of judgment, where the people would go and they would listen, and the priest would give the judgment on a particular case. And so it may be that this is an indication that the scroll is a judgment, which of course, as we carry on, we can see that it is. So verse 3, and he said, "This is the curse that is going out over the whole land. For according to what it says on one side, every thief will be banished, and according to what it says on the other, everyone who swears falsely will be banished." Okay, so on the scroll is written a curse going out over the whole land. Now, if we want to know about curses, the place to go is Deuteronomy. We can go back to Deuteronomy 27, read Deuteronomy chapter 28. The whole of Deuteronomy chapter 28, nearly, from verse 15 on, is about the dreadful things that will happen to the people if they leave God's law and if they do their own thing, going all the way up to Deuteronomy chapter 30. And so there the instruction is that God has given the law, and Moses says to the people, you must obey the law, and if you obey it, you will know blessing. But if you do not obey it, and if you forsake God, if you leave God, then you will be cursed, and ultimately you will be sent into exile, and God will punish you in this way. Remember, we're not quite sure which writing came first. If we are of the school that believes Deuteronomy was written by Ezra, then that would actually have been written after Zechariah. If it was written by Moses, it would have been written before Zechariah. But the point is to see that there's a congruence between the two, that there's no discontinuity, but that the two relate very nicely to each other. I do just want to read Deuteronomy chapter 30, verses 1 to 10, and to understand that this is the context in which Zechariah is speaking about this curse. Find my glasses. When all these blessings and curses I have set before you come upon you, and take them to heart wherever the Lord your God disperses you among the nations, and when you and your children return to the Lord your God, and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes, and have compassion on you, and gather you again from all the nations where he scattered you. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord will gather you and bring you back. He will bring you back to the land that belonged to your fathers, and you will take possession of it. He will make you more prosperous and numerous than your fathers. The Lord your God will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your descendants, so that you may love him with all your heart and with all your soul, and live. The Lord your God will put all these curses on your enemies who hate and persecute you. You will again obey the Lord and follow all his commands I am giving you today. Then the Lord your God will make you most prosperous in all the work of your hands, and in the fruit of your womb, the young of your livestock, and the crops of your land. The Lord will again delight in you and make you prosperous, just as he delighted in your fathers. If you obey the Lord your God, and keep his commands and decrees that are written in this book of the law, and turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. And so that last bit is where Moses is saying, after all the curses come, and you are now back in the land, you don't want the curse to come again, and so obey the law. And Zechariah is picking it up on his side and saying, here is the scroll, and on this scroll is the curse. The curse is written, because it still matters that you keep the law. It is not just a matter of rebuilding the temple and now everything's going to be okay. But the point of everything is to be holy to God and to do the right thing. On the one side of the scroll is written, thieves will be banished. On the other side of the scroll, those who swear falsely, those who lie, will be banished. The word banished is a bit unclear in the Hebrew, difficult to translate, whether it means cut off, swept away, or whether the sins have until now been unpunished. But the point is that it's some form of judgment. But why these two commandments? We know that there are 10 commandments. The Levitical law is very much longer than that. Why these two? Do not steal and do not lie. And it's very interesting. There's the 8th and the 9th commandments, and you wonder if there's anything significant in that, but I can't really see anything there. If you go back now to Leviticus chapter 6, I'm not going to read it because it takes a little while, but if you want to go and look it up yourself, it would be good. Leviticus chapter 6, verses 1 to 7, is a set of if you do thises, if you know what I mean, where it says that if you steal something, or if somebody loses something and you find it and you don't tell them that you found it but you kept it yourself, or if you take money deceitfully from somebody else, what we would call extortion, any of these things, it then allows them a way of making it right. You can then come and say, I have done it, I'm sorry, I give it back, and I give another fifth on top of it to attempt to make restitution. Now, the thing with the Levitical law is it gave the people a way out. You see, what would have happened, and this is not in the Bible, it's just known from ancient practices, is what would have happened is if somebody had stolen something, and you said, you have stolen my cow, and they say, I have not stolen your cow, and nobody can prove it either way, then the person who was accused would say, I swear by God that I have not stolen your cow. And then he would be allowed to go because there was nothing further that could be done. And by swearing to God, he had put himself in the hands of God, and so it was up to God. And so this person's sin moved from a breach of trust with his fellow being, his fellow human, because he's stolen the cow, to when he actually swears and tells a lie in the name of God, that it becomes a breach of trust with God. And so these two commands are actually pretty representative of relationships with people and with God. On the one hand, it says you shall live in a lifestyle and an attitude of trust with your neighbor. You shall be trustworthy. You shall not steal. And you shall live in a lifestyle and an attitude and a life of trust with God, where you will not breach that trust, where what you say is true, and you will not lie in his name. And so it almost takes us to the New Testament of love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Do not steal. Live in harmony and peace and honesty with your neighbor. Do not lie. And as it goes on into the next verse to say, in the name of the Lord, keep honest and have integrity before God. And so I think that is probably why those two are on the scroll. There may be other reasons, and we may be that one day we'll discover what God's reason was, but that seems to me a pretty good representation of live a lifestyle that God wants us to live. And then the verse 4 says, the Lord Almighty declares, I will send it out, and it will enter the house of the thief, and the house of anyone who swears falsely by my name. It will remain in that house, and destroy it completely, both its timbers and its stones. And here he is personifying the curse, as Jeremiah did with death. He speaks about death going in through the window of the house at the time before the people went into exile. And here we have this idea of the curse creeping in and living inside the house and rotting it away from the inside, which is a pretty good description of what happens to us when we choose not to follow God and we choose the way of evil, when we know that we have lied, that it rots away from the inside. And so Zechariah says this is what is going to happen. That curse is going to come and live in you. And people might not find out, but you are in the hands of God, and you will become ultimately totally destroyed. He doesn't actually give here the chance of forgiveness, but of course we in the Christian church would say that obviously at any point you can turn and admit your sin and come, as they said in Leviticus chapter 6, and make restitution. And so this is quite challenging. After the first few visions saying everything is good, God's going to come back and live in Jerusalem, the temple is going to be built, Zechariah giving a big warning, saying it's out there written big and wide. You need to still obey the law of God, and you need to still do what is right. Otherwise, it's growing. That curse is going to come and grow inside your house until you are destroyed. Thank you for joining us, everybody. We're now going to move to Zoom, where the discussion will continue. Please, as soon as you log off here, log into Zoom, and the discussion will go on. May God bless you and keep you.